Hello and welcome to the Better Than the Experts sports show where I try to prove to you that I am better than all those jabronis at ESPN. Today, we're doing the 2025 NFL mock draft. It's past free agency for the most part. It's past the combine. We're ready to get right into it. I have a time limit of like 22 minutes on this video, so I'll try to go a little bit quicker, but we'll see. Uh, First round, number one pick, Titans. All things are pointing to them taking a quarterback. Cam Ward is up there. Shedeur Sanders is up there. I think they'll like Cam Ward a whole lot better. He has a higher ceiling than Shedeur Sanders. I like him going at the number one spot. Now for the Browns. They could also go quarterback. Their starting quarterback right now is Kenny Pickett. Really bad. Deshaun Watson's hurt. I don't think they want him in there anyway, but whatever. If they want to take Sanders, I wouldn't be surprised. But they've also seen like Russell Wilson coming in for a visit, which shows me that they're looking at other options for quarterback. So there's also two guys up here that could be generational talents. Abdul Carter, pairing him up next to Myles Garrett, or opposite of Myles Garrett, could be deadly. Deadly, deadly. By far the best player in this draft is Abdul Carter. Dominant in the college football playoff. It only makes sense for them to take him here at number two. So, now for the Giants, you definitely got to take one of the Colorado guys. I've heard that they're very high on Shedeur Sanders. A lot of people have been saying that Shedeur could fall a little bit. I think the Giants are a perfect landing spot for Shedeur. They have Malik Neighbors. They're a big market team in New York. I think Dion would approve of Shedeur going to the Giants, and I think that Shedeur would approve as well. I think that the Giants will take him here at number 10, especially when their starting quarterback right now is Tommy DeVito. Now, if you're the Patriots here at number 4, this is the dream scenario. Two quarterbacks taken in the top 3, and now you're staring directly at a potentially generational talent in Travis Hunter. He can play wide receiver and cornerback. Can he do that in the league? Maybe. But the potential of him being able to do that is worthy of him being taken here at number 4. Now for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Defensive tackle, their highest team need. They have Trayvon Walker and Joshua Hines Allen off the edge. Adding a guy like Mason Graham on the interior can bring that Saxonville defense right back, bring them right back to where they need to be. Mason Graham, dominant inside defender, and I think that he's going to be too good to pass up here at number 5. Now for the Raiders, I really like this fit for them. They don't have a running back right now that's any good. They just traded for Geno. They need to get that offense rolling. Ashton Jeanty seems to make sense. He was absolutely dominant in college. Heisman candidate. Should have won probably, but that's neither here nor there. Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders at 6. Now the Jets at number 7. They probably wish that Shedeur would have fallen to them, I'd have to imagine. But Justin Fields ain't bad. Justin Fields ain't bad. So they need offensive tackle. They got two really good ones looking at him here. Will Campbell and Armand Membu. Will Campbell is a bit undersized for a tackle, but he can move to guard potentially if they needed him to. And I feel like he has way more talent and way more potential than Membu does. Both very good players, but I think Will Campbell has a higher ceiling, so I think the Jets go with him here. Number 8, the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young had a very good season last year compared to his rookie year. You got to continue to develop him, though. And the best way to develop a guy like that is give him some wide receiver help. They have Xavier Legette and Adam Thielen in that room. Not good enough. McMillan is staring you right in the face. Very good wide receiver. And you got to take him to give Bryce Young some weapons. Now for the Saints at number 9. A lot of things you could do here. A lot of holes in this Saints team as a whole. Probably wishing for Jeanty or McMillan to fall here to get an offensive playmaker that they're really lacking besides for Chris Olave. A guy that I've seen mocked here a lot is Tyler Warren. I don't think that they'd be willing to take a tight end this high. But what I do think that they do is go for somewhere on defense. A lot of Saints fans probably won't like it, but their defense is just as bad as their offense is. They just traded away, not just, they traded away Marshawn Lattimore, and Paulson Adebo left them for the Giants. And Will Johnson sitting right there, I think it only makes sense. He's probably the best cornerback in the draft, not named Travis Hunter. So I think they got to start rebuilding that cornerback room. Number 10 for the Bears. They rebuilt that offensive line for Caleb, who got sacked like 70 times last year. They're really, really, really focusing on that offensive line. Drew Dahlman, Jonah Jackson, Joe Tooney, Darnell Wright. Braxton Jones, however, is at left tackle. I think that if you take a guy like Membu, who has potential, could be really big for them and cement that offensive line as one of the best in the league, turning a certified weakness into a certified strength this season. So I think they go with Membu here. Continue building on that O-line. Now for the 49ers. Lost a whole lot of their team. They're not going to be very good this season, I'd have to imagine. But a guy that's been mocked really high, rising up the draft board since the combine, the very athletic Shamar Stewart. 1.5 sacks at Texas A&M last year. Not a whole lot of production, but a guy similar to like Travon Walker, super athletic, could produce really high in the league. And look how Travon Walker's doing. Not as good as Aiden Hutchinson. I still don't know why they picked him over Hutchinson, but 2 straight 10-sack seasons for Travon Walker. I think Shamar Stewart could have the same production in the league. And his potential is way above Travon Walker at this point, so I think Shamar Stewart has to go at 11. Now for the Cowboys. A guy that's been rising up draft boards too is a guy named Jihad Campbell. A lot of insiders have said that a lot of teams like him to go pretty high. I've seen some mock him in the top 10. Campbell is a guy I think would fit very well into that Cowboys defense that really needs a strong linebacker presence because their linebacking room right now is not very good. I think Campbell will check all the boxes for him here. Now at number 13 for the Dolphins, I think this one's pretty simple. You got one of the most versatile defenders, and Malachi Starks here can play safety for you after Javon Holland left for the Giants. I think it only makes sense to plug and play him there at 13. Now 14, this one makes a whole lot of sense too if he falls this far, which I think he will. Tyler Warren, top need is a tight end, obviously. Get some more weapons for Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, I guess. Tyler Warren here was dominant in the college football playoff. It only makes sense for them to get more weapons, and he's probably the best weapon left. So Tyler Warren here at 14. Now for the Falcons, they need defense really badly. There's a couple of Georgia defenders here, Mykel Williams and Jalen Walker. Which one do they like better? I'd be willing to bet that they like Jalen Walker more after Mykel Williams' very poor pro day performance. Jalen Walker seems like the better prospect at this point. So might as well snag one of the hometown guys. Jalen Walker is the pick. Now for the Cardinals. Top need is an edge. They need to build on that defensive line. And I see a whole lot of nothing here. Mykel Williams, there's some question marks about his athleticism. James Pierce Jr., whole lot of talks about him potentially sliding to the second round because of his lack of pass rush ability. He relies on his athleticism a little too much, very undersized for an edge rusher. He had a lot of production, but that type of guy does not translate well into the league. But Mike Green came from Marshall. I see a whole lot of potential in him. I think he's the best pass rusher left on the board. I think that he's a guy that the Cardinals would really like to have. Now, for the Cincinnati Bengals, they just signed T and Jamar to big contracts. They need to start working on that defense, though. Offense is set. You need to draft well on defense in order for this team to succeed. Sam Hubbard just retired. Big hole at edge. You've had a big hole at defensive tackle. You signed T.J. Slayton. You re-signed B.J. Hill to get that run stop help, but you don't have a bona fide stud pass rushing defensive tackle. When I think of bona fide stud pass rushing defensive tackles, I'm looking at Walter Nolan. He can add some punch to that room that desperately needs some pass rushing help so that Trey Hendrickson doesn't take every single sack next year. Now for the Seahawks. At 18, a lot of things you could do here. Just traded away Geno, traded away DK Metcalf. A lot of your offense is gone. Lockett's gone. I think you got to go receiver here to give Darnold what he had in Minnesota. A couple of good wide receivers there, Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. Cooper Kupp doesn't really move the needle for me, so you get a guy like Ibuka here who played at Ohio State with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I feel like the chemistry's there. It only makes sense for them to get another wide receiver for Sam Darnold. Now for the Buccaneers. A lot of needs for them on defense. But what I like for them, though, this could be controversial, is Colson Loveland. He's a guy that I could see in kind of like a Dalton Kincaid role. When you already have Cade Otton, the Bills had Dawson Knox. They drafted Kincaid because he was BPA pretty much. And I feel the same here for Colson Loveland, who a lot of people have in their top 10 prospects, like Daniel Jeremiah does. So I think that Colson Loveland could add some depth to the tight end room with Cade Otton that they don't really have right now. So Colson Loveland is the pick. Now for the Denver Broncos, they need a wide receiver really badly. They need some offensive weapons for Bo Nix to continue developing himself. Guy I like here is Luther Burden. He's probably the third best wide receiver in this draft besides Travis Hunter and McMillan. I really like Luther Burden. I think that he's going to find a lot of success in the league. I think the Broncos will agree with me here. Now for the Steelers, they could take a quarterback. Jackson Dart is a guy that's been talked about going here. They put Jalen Milroe. They had Jalen Milroe come to town on a visit. I think taking one of them here would be organizational malpractice, though, after what you saw happen to Kenny Pickett. Reached on Kenny Pickett. He sucks, wins a Super Bowl for another team, and is now on the Browns. So, what do you do here? Not a quarterback. I think you got to go with a tackle. Just lost Dan Moore in free agency. You got to replace him. Kelvin Banks slid a little bit. I think that taking him here would be great value for the Steelers. Now for the Chargers. Lots of things you could do here. Defensive tackle, especially with a guy like Kenneth Grant. Went to Michigan. Their coach, John Harbaugh, also Michigan. The Michigan coach a little while ago. But a guy that has slid a little bit here that a lot of people are high on is Jahdae Barron. Bring him into the cornerback room that desperately needs some depth. There's a lot of good defensive tackles in this draft class. Can't really say the same about cornerbacks. So I think the best value at this pick, the best plan of action, is to go with Barron. Now for the Packers. Edge rusher is their biggest need. When you look at the edges, Mykel Williams, James Pierce, probably the only two that would go in this position. I think you go with Mykel Williams because he's a lot bigger than James Pierce. He's the more stereotypical guy. I think that they'll like him here better than James Pierce, so I'm going to go with him at 23. Now for the Vikings. One of the most underrated guys in this draft, Shavon Revell from East Carolina. He probably would have been the second best cornerback in this draft if not for his injury. But I still think he has a whole lot of potential. And this is great value at 24, especially with how good he can be in the league if given a chance. So 24 for the Vikings. Cornerback is their biggest need. Now for the Texans, they traded away Laramie Tunsil. This one seems fairly simple. You got Josh Simmons on the board. He went to Ohio State. C.J. Stroud went to Ohio State. They need a tackle. It only makes sense. Now for the Rams, they traded away Jonah Jackson. They got a lot of holes elsewhere, but there's not a lot of guys left at these positions. So I think you take a flyer on a guy like Tyler Booker, who a lot of people have in the early teens going. So Tyler Booker is going to be the pick, replace Jonah Jackson at guard. Now for the Ravens. The Ravens, I feel like, would like a guy like James Pierce. Super athletic, a little bit of a developmental prospect, but the Ravens have not shied away from developmental prospects in the slightest. And I think that if they can unlock James Pierce, he can be one of the best pass rushers in the league. Do I think that'll happen? No, his game is not going to translate to the NFL level at all, but I think that it's worth taking a flyer on this late. And a lot of people have said that he's going to slide this far, so it only makes sense. For the Lions, I see edge, guard, cornerback, safety, wide receiver. Not a whole lot here, but what I do see is Kenneth Grant from Michigan, who could have gone a lot earlier, to be honest. He's a Michigan guy. The Lions are in Michigan. Only makes sense to bring in a hometown guy. There's a lot of depth in that Lions defensive tackle room, but I think adding one more couldn't hurt, especially with how deep this edge class is. Keep adding to that defensive line that just lost Zadarius Smith. Um, Aiden Hutchinson's coming back from injury. So if you take Kenneth Grant, maybe draft an edge rusher later, that could be the move. I like Kenneth Grant's value here at the end of the first, though. Now for Washington, one of the best fits I think for them is at safety. They lost both of their safeties this offseason. Nick Emenwari has been flying up the draft boards. I feel like it only makes sense for them to pick him here to fill their biggest position of need, in my opinion. Now for the Bills. One of their biggest needs is defensive tackle. They need someone to fill in next to Ed Oliver. Derek Harmon is a guy that could have gone way earlier, to be honest, maybe in the early to late teens. But Derek Harmon, I think, would be a great guy to put next to Ed Oliver in that defense that really needs some depth at the defensive tackle position. Now for the Chiefs, they traded away Joe Thuney. They've needed an offensive lineman. So why not get a guy that can play guard? He can play center. He can play tackle. He might be able to play tight end for you if you wanted to. If Travis Kelce retires, who knows? But he can play anywhere on the offensive line. Very versatile guy. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. I feel like that fills a hole for them immediately. Now for the Eagles, they don't have a lot of holes because they just won the Super Bowl. Very good team. Probably the most complete team in the league. But they did, unfortunately, lose Mekhi Becton at right guard. And their guard currently is Kenyon Green. And I feel like if they want to keep that identity of being a rushing offense, being a dominant offensive line, one of the best offensive lines in the league for a long time, they got to replace that right guard. Donovan Jackson's still sitting there. He can be a plug-and-play right guard and keep that identity of being a big rushing, dominant rushing team and maybe win them another Super Bowl next year. Who knows? So that is the end of the first round. Thank you guys for watching. And we'll see what happens in late April, and I'll probably make a couple more of these, hopefully. But I'll see you guys then.